Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to another day of Somato Enlightenment and today's episode of Somatic Navigation. Talking a little bit this week on kind of why we store fat and why we can't digest things and other things going through our digestive system. Another one to also consider if you're having digestive lower digestive symptoms, and kind of working with, again, those emotions that might be stored there and what your body is trying to tell you. Again, today with intuitive movement, I'll talk a little bit about fascia real quick. Fascia is the stuff that covers your entire body from head to toe. It covers your every organ, it covers every bone, it covers every cell, muscle cell, and then it covers your entire muscle. It's the connective tissue. It's what becomes the tendons and the muscles. It's all the connective tissue that kind of keeps you secure and kind of everything in place. And also kind of with when we're talking about storing fat and how that relates to fascia is because sometimes when we're able to move better, you notice that things move, you can get that energy moving a little bit better, you can get your the water throughout your body moving better, you can get, and by doing this, it's going to help you kind of get rid of some of those fat stores as well, because sometimes the fascia being all knotted up and all entangled inside the fascia, or inside so fat stores and fascia kind of getting intertwined into each other can be another reason why you might be holding on to something like that. And so if we can get to a place where we can move and flow more freely, then it's much easier to get rid of the fat storage. It's much easier to get rid of anything that your body's holding on to. Things like, again, we're talking about things that we're consuming and how that affects you. So we talked a little bit yesterday about how sugar kind of plays into that. Chemicals that you put into your body also play into this. They talk about like empty calories and things like that, and why you might be, like scientific reasons why you might be storing things. And just basic math of the calories that you're consuming is greater than the calories that you're burning, those kind of things. So when we go beyond just some of those things, we can get into the why, which is what I challenged you yesterday with, was the why. So talking a little bit about how the fascia plays into that. The fascia might keep the fat storage in a specific area. So if we're talking about maybe this lower region of things that you might have extra storage of fat in your lower region here. You might have some trouble with digestion, where you're having either some constipation or some diarrhea and that thing, and how that's stuff that's like down here. Your lower half of your body holds a lot of foundational issues. Your hips and specifically your small intestine hold things like abandonment. So that might be another reason why you might be holding on to some fat, is because you feel abandoned. You feel like you're not getting those nutrients that you need. And then your body is like, okay, well, I'm going to hold on to it then. And I'm going to keep holding on to it until something changes, like until you can figure out exactly what emotion I'm holding on to, what traumatic event I'm holding on to is. I'm going to keep holding on to this, and in hopes that, it's going to do some good for you in some way. Either it's going to do some good for you because it's supporting you in that area, or it's going to do some good for you in the fact that it's going to make you make some changes in your life to be able to not need the fat anymore. And that's kind of the big thing on why we're holding on to fat, is because our body feels like for some reason we need it. We need it to protect ourselves in some way. And again, things are not always things that happened in your lifetime. Sometimes it's things that happened in your parents' lifetime and their parents, your great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. And things can get passed down up to like 8 generations. If you haven't read this little article on mice, they did I'll tell you real quick, they did this little study on mice where they traumatized some mice, and then they didn't do anything for 8 generations of mice, and noticed that 8 generations later, they still, like when they heard like it was like a bell or something, when they still heard like the bell, they still were traumatized by this, and it never happened in their lifetime. It was just something that they had been holding on to, through their subconscious, through their DNA for 8 generations, and it's still, this last little mouse was still traumatized by something that happened to that mouse 8 generations ago. And I think that's really important for us to remember, is that the things that we hold on to aren't always ours. We might take it as ours in some way, and then kind of make it our own little flavor of it. But it's not always the origin. So sometimes it's important to kind of get to why you specifically are holding on to something. And it could be because you're holding on to it from somebody else. So that's kind of something to consider when we're talking about this. Things that we hold on to, and things that we want to keep. So today I feel like I really want to kind of target in on abandonment, and kind of see where that kind of is stored. It's going to be kind of stored a little bit differently in everybody's body, because you might feel abandonment in different ways. Again, I said that abandonment is kind of held in the organ of your small intestine, and just kind of noticing that, but might have some other issue, and that's why it might be stored somewhere else in my body and not just in my small intestine. It might be, I'm feeling like it's very much in this right leg. This right leg is just really like trying to move around right now. So I'm going to kind of let it do its thing and see what happens. And it feels like it's kind of like in my hip area. It feels, when I'm talking about abandonment, I feel like it's very, very active in my hip. One of the things that, again, you can add on, I think I've talked about some of these pulse points in other videos. Abandonment, your small intestine can be in one of 2 spots. One is the first point. So if you've got 3 points, it's the very first one. And then you just attach that to your forehead and kind of breathe through it. And you might hold that for a few minutes to kind of breathe through something. I keep wanting to kind of to move forward. So I feel like it's this hip flexors holding some stuff. Hip flexors kind of hold a little bit more of that moving, propelling forward kind of stuff. Abandonment in that can also have to do with like fight, flight, freeze. I had to like abandon my roots because I had to get away from something, or somebody left me and I felt abandoned by this. So that's kind of some of the stuff to think about. Again, I feel like I'm working a lot on my hip. Hips are a little bit about where like your 2 families join. So again, right side is about your dad's lineage. The left side's more about your mom's lineage and kind of how that plays in. And so I'm just kind of feeling through it. I'm noticing that it's got a very big connection to like the whole ridge of my sacrum there, my tailbone. So like it's sacrum's kind of like a little heart-shaped bone, and I'm kind of feeling it all the way down one side. It feels very active. Your glutes and some of your rotators and your hips kind of attached there. So I'm kind of feeling some things, and I am noticing that I do want to turn, again, when you open up your hips, you're wanting to change directions. So abandonment for me might be in my my dad's side of my family. My parents divorced when I was really young, so I didn't live with my dad, so it could feel a little bit of that. And again, my leg really wants to turn out, so I'm gonna like kind of let it do it and see what happens, and see what that let go of, what that lets go of. And I am noticing that I'm feeling feeling like a line from like here to here, like straight through, that feels very active and very like it really needs to, like I'm kind of squeezing those muscles right now. It feels like it needs like to be really like squeezed and supported, and my body needs to know that like all those muscles are activated. Every muscle cell there feels like it needs to be activated, and to support me. And which makes a lot of sense because I'm talking about abandonment and I feel like I need support. And I guess I feel like maybe I need support in a new direction, that kind of thing. And I'm going to kind of feel this one out and see what happened, what's changed, what's different. Again, if I'm thinking about abandonment, it kind of goes back to, again, that ridge alongside of like the whole side of my sacrum to this point here on my hip bone. While it's not the same bone, it just kind of, it feels very connected. It almost feels like there's a line again that's going straight through my body from my hip bone, and then that whole section of my sacrum on the ridge there. And so I'm just kind of noticing how that kind of changed things. Normally when I stand, I do stand a little bit outturned, but I did notice that when I was just kind of standing here right before I said that, my feet were very much in the same direction. And so that's also kind of something to think about when you're thinking about like abandonment and why you might be holding on to something that way, is that you might be trying to move into a different direction, and that's why you have one leg out. It's because you want to move into a different direction than possibly your family, or possibly a direction you were previously moving to. So now if I'm just kind of, again, feeling into abandonment, see if there's anything else that feels like it needs a little something. I am kind of noticing like this outside hip just kind of feels a little bit, a little tight. Feels a little tight, a little more tight than it did earlier, or that I'm just kind of noticing it now. And so I might work a little bit more, even just that little bit of kind of movement helped kind of stretch things. I did notice that as I just did that, I did feel a little click in my SI joint, so that joint in between this big hip bone and my sacrum, that tailbone. So I'm not sure if that like clicked it back in the right place, or if I just kind of moved into a place that wasn't so comfortable. I am noticing that my hips feel different now. So I worked a little bit on abandonment today, and my hips kind of changed a little bit today. So that's kind of something that if that's an emotion that you resonate with, that you might work on, try to channel that through your body and feel where in your body you feel it and why you want to move in a specific way. And again, like if you notice your leg turning out, it might be because you're trying to run into a different direction, or you're trying to, maybe you're splitting your like splitting what you want to do. Like you don't have one goal, you've got two kind of things, or you want to go in different directions, or like maybe both feet are out, maybe you were kind of wanting to go in completely separate directions with things. Whereas now, again, I'm noticing, I'm looking down again, my feet are mostly straight. My right one is still trying to go into a different direction, but that's something that I'm going to continue to work on, because it's not going to change overnight, and it's not going to change in a 5-minute movement pattern. But I do feel like it's helped me kind of move forward in that direction. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and we'll see you next time. Again, you can check me out on Somato Enlightenment on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.